What happens when two successful entrepreneurs get together for a drink? They talk shop, of course. So grab your favorite cocktail and sit alongside Scott DeLong and Vince Moiso, two seasoned business leaders that have driven their own companies to success, as they share from their experience and dive deep into the secret sauce that can turn a company around. The CEO Podcast starts now.
Welcome to the CEO Podcast. I'm Vince Moiso, and I'm here with Scott DeLong. And today we're going to talk about communication, and specifically communication in the workplace. So we're going to discuss everything from email etiquette to just how to improve communication across an entire organizational structure, and certainly how that impacts culture. Now, I got to give some background because Scott here is a PhD, and communication is at the top of his list of what he's an expert at. So we'd like to spend a few minutes just to get the background on all the work that you've done around communication.
Well, actually, we do a series of courses that we take small groups and we teach communication in a corporate environment. And we did that with your company as well. And basically what we deal with in communication is how people communicate with each other, how to take responsibility for your part of the communication. And probably the most important portion of communication is the listening skills that we try to teach. And listening is a little bit different than, there's typical listening skills where you say nod and mirror them and paraphrase and all of that's important, no question about it. But there's more to it than that. And it goes back to what Stephen Covey talks about. I know you like Covey. And that is listen to understand as opposed to listen to reply, which is what most of us do. So here's how that works. I meet somebody new in some setting, it doesn't matter what the setting is, and they start talking to me about their interests. And I immediately jump in because I want to make a connection with them. And I said, oh yeah, I've been to Costa Rica too. And I start this and get in that. And all I've done is deflate that conversation because the guy or gal, whoever I'm talking to, didn't even get into their story. And then I stepped on them. So I'm listening to reply with good intentions. My intentions were to make a connection, but what I really did is I pushed them further away because I wasn't spending the time hearing them, right? So this listening to reply is a big portion of it. More than that, though, is that listening to understand creates a sense of empathy with people, getting to know who they are from their point of view. Definitely. I've got a saying that I use all the time, that communication is what they hear and understand, not what I said. Mm-hmm. You ever been in a situation where you get into a group of people working for you, right? And you say, okay, here we go. Give them A, B, C, D, E, and F. You're really clear on your communication. Everyone know what I mean, right? And they all nod their heads because they know what you mean. No, they know what they heard. A week later, the report comes in and there's 6 different versions of what you meant. And from your point of view, I was clear. They were clear on what they heard as well.
I spent half my career, Scott, making that very, very mistake as a leader. Just assuming that everybody understood exactly what I was saying. I know I did, right? And never realizing that they heard their version of what I said. Right. Hence, it's important to have people repeat back to you what they heard, sure, so you know that you're in alignment. And I practice that daily. And I can't tell you how many times, and I created the false expectation myself, but I can't tell you how many times where I was just disappointed. I was disappointed in the report that came back to me, the things that came back to me. And wow, I was so miserable, right? Just in this constant state of disappointment and not understanding what the source of the problem was.
So there's something else that I learned, and this was a long time ago that I learned this. When everybody else looks wrong, it might not be them. So what's my part of this? And like you said, get in the to repeat what it is that you said, but not to parrot it, not to say the exact words. Right. You want to hear a paraphrase to make sure that they've understood you in their language. And that gives you an opportunity to say exactly, or no, not quite what I meant was, right? So that you get their understanding and their feeling. So I think that's really important. That paraphrasing portion is really important. But what's more important is, and here I am talking, but what's really important is to find out what the other person's thinking. find out and listening to them.
Yeah.
Listening is so much more important than talking in most cases. Right. That's 2 ears, 1 mouth. So, listen twice as much as you speak. I need to practice that a little more myself, but that's a big part of it.
I had a coach this one time. I'll share this anecdote with you. So I had a coach that challenged me. At the time, I was going into a meeting with 2 of the assistant athletic directors at the University of San Diego, and I was pitching the launch of what is now the Torero Football Club. Okay. So this is many years ago at this point. And I was building basically a booster club for the program that had never existed before. But, there's a lot of nuances when you're dealing with academia. As you know, we've had this conversation.
Different politics.
Yeah. So
it's all politics. It's just different than what we're used to.
But here's what my coach said. He goes, you need to sit down and just listen. Yeah. So you're going to state what you want to do. You're going to listen. And then this is what he said. You can only repeat or paraphrase what you hear. You're not going to object. You're not going to give them some other solution. You're not going to listen to solve, listen to respond. You're not going to do any of that. You're just going to listen. And then when you feel like it's the moment that you're done, you're simply going to respond with a paraphrase or exactly what you heard. So I thought he was crazy. I literally told him on the phone, you are out of your fucking mind. And I know I used that word appropriately right here.
That one's okay.
So I'm going into this.
It was a direct quote, so you had to use it.
I went into this meeting with so much anxiety, Scott. I'd never done that before. And I thought this meeting is going to be a total bust. However, I was game to follow what my coach's advice was. Great. And I did exactly that. At the end of the meeting, they said, well, great. Let's schedule with everybody involved next week so we can get this thing off the ground. That's how it ended. I literally stood up. I thought to myself, this is the craziest lunch meeting I think I've ever had. I got in the car. I called my coach. I said, I don't know what Jedi mind trick I just pulled, but I did exactly what you said. Yeah. I never solved for anything.
Didn't have to sell anything.
I didn't sell anything. Right. I just listened. Yeah. I just responded by paraphrasing and making sure we were in alignment of what I heard. And at the end of it, I got agreement that we were going to move forward with the Torero Football Club. And I to this day, I'm sitting there. I couldn't tell you how that happened. Like it was magic. It was literally magic.
Well, there's actually science on how that happened. And it's, I say science, but it's really a simple human thing. People want to feel like they're being heard.
Yeah.
Dr. Mark Golston talks about feeling. People want to feel felt, right? Yeah. If you can do that, if you can make people feel heard, feel understood, you have instant connection. It's amazing how fast that you can build that connection, that trust and respect, and all those other things that end up coming from that. There's another technique instead of just paraphrasing. There's another thing that you can do to really let people know that you're listening to them, and that's asking clarifying questions about something that they're saying, and not just one question, but multiple questions. The concept of the 5 whys, if you've ever heard that, which is, when somebody brings you something, Dr. or Captain Jack Sparrow from the Disney Pirates of the Caribbean, the issue is not the issue. The issue is your understanding of the issue, something along, right? So the thing I bring you is really not it, but it really comes from something more deep-seated. So if somebody tells you something, you pick out the key word in what they're telling you, and you can tell the key word because of their animation or their facial reaction or something. You can see what is an emotional connection to a word within that. Ask somebody a question about that word. So we want to get to the why, right? So you want to get to why without asking why. Remember, it makes you sound like you're mean if you ask somebody why. So I use an acronym called TED. Tell, explain, or describe. That's what the acronym stands for. So how to use that? So you can get to a story. You can get somebody to tell you a story by saying, well, that's really interesting. Tell me more. Tell me more about Judy Smith. Tell me whatever they were talking about, right? So that's a good way of getting to the why. They will tell you a story. The E is for explain. You can use this one. You can say, well, help me understand. Can you explain to me how that would work in the real world. Or describe a scenario where that has happened to you before, right? Each one of those statements or questions, right? They sound like a statement, it's really a question, will get them to tell you another story. And that story will be a level deeper than the original story that they told you.
Yeah.
And then find something in that second story and say, again, tell me more.
Well, doesn't that go to, Carnegie's book, right? How to Win Friends and Influence People. And he just talks about when, people want to talk about themselves. People want to tell their story. And if you express genuine interest in what they have to say, and you truly listen and you ask the clarifying questions as you just described, wow. I mean, you're just going to get deeper on that relationship. Your communication is only going to improve. I know both you and I know this because we put it both into practice. So it's not just a thing we teach and coach. It's this thing that we practice every single day. I practice it in my relationships with my wife, with my daughters, with my employees, with my friends, with my mom, my siblings. I mean, just anywhere I can do that. I've radically changed in probably the last 5 years, especially. It's radically changed my relationships.
So multiple things happen. One, you get more information by asking them from their point of view. That information can help you frame your next sales pitch or attack or debate. Having that information from their point of view, understanding what's important to them, helps you with your case.
Yeah.
But more than that, it helps with relationship. When they feel felt, they feel that you care, and care is what matters to people. They want to know that you care. Whether you're a leader, whether you're a husband, whether a child, it doesn't matter. People want to know you care.
Builds a high level of trust.
Yeah.
No question.
Definitely.
Well, you teach on this regularly. It's something that you've built out. You've built what I consider to be just a top-notch course around communication.
Thank you.
Obviously, I brought you into my own business, and you've worked with several of our employees, specifically with the sales group, as well as others. And I think you've done the communication course a couple of times, and then you went several weeks where you had the weekly meetings, and then you worked with some key managers. And I can tell you, like, the positive results from that. Communication has become a cornerstone of what we discuss every month. So when we go onto our one page and we're reviewing it and we're doing our monthly strategic plan sessions, communication is the first thing we start with. This is what we ask the entire group. Rank it from 1 to 10 right now. How is communication in this business? And we want to hold. And if somebody says it's a 6 or a 7, then we just dive in. Yeah. Why is it a 6 or a 7? What exactly is going on? And then it becomes a priority, and it goes on there as a goal and as a task that here's some things in this department or wherever that need to change as a result of that. I mean, really, communication is to the point that without it, we're not doing the things that we're doing successfully right now.
So here's the problem with communication, or saying you're a communication. We all think we communicate well, but we just do, right? Yeah. It's easy. We talk, they listen, we're communicating. And the fact of the matter is we really don't. We don't communicate well. There are so many misunderstandings. I was just working with a couple people from another organization, and these two people couldn't stand each other. Like, they couldn't stand being in the same room. They're new to each other, and they couldn't stand each other. So we tried to find out what the problem was. Well, she said this and she said that and this, that, and it was probably some minor little tiny thing that just didn't hit right one time that spiraled into something that was just negative, right? Yeah. So you got to reverse that. And how do you reverse that? Is you get people to recognize that that's a human being you're talking to. Uh-huh. They care. They care about the company. They care about their families. They care about whatever it is, just like you. So in this case, what we did is I had them each. This was really, I'd never tried this before. I had them each write a separate list of the things that you believe you have in common with this other person, right? Neither of us have kids. We both made it to a vice president. And they started with 2 or 3 things that were, okay, I have that in common. So I had them go back and do it again. And then they got more things. They started going down more and more and more. And it got down to, it was so cool, because it got down to, you two have more in common than you have in difference. The only difference that you have is your style, your style of communication. One of them even put on their list, and we're not talking about who it is, one of them put on their list, we both have great fashion sense. Had nothing to do with business. It had nothing to do with families. She liked the way the other gal dressed, right? And she takes pride in herself on that thing. And fine, there's another thing we have in common. So it goes back to this. I mean, we've talked about this in the past, this circle of trust that's developed, and we'll talk about trust later. But there's the 3 of the 4 components of that. The one is the being with respect for, and not the respect that's earned, not the respect that says, and that guy can throw a football 65 yards. So I respect him for that, or he can drive a team, or he can do all that. No, respect for human dignity. Just respect for the human.
Yeah.
They're trying to do the best they can too. That, like, these are people that are doing the best they can with the information they have. Can you start there? Well, the things we have in common. Yeah. Okay. That's trying to raise, a good family or be a good human. Great. Start there. Listen to understand is the next step. Right. So, which we talked a little bit about that earlier. And then this other component, this EO component, came from EO Entrepreneur Organization. This Gestalt language protocol is what they call it. And it's really just sharing from experience, as opposed to telling somebody what to do.
Right.
I'm not allowed to tell you what to do. I have no idea what you should do. Right.
Yeah.
So 2 reasons you don't do that. The first one is, it's pretty arrogant of me to assume I know what you should do. 2, I don't have your experience. I don't have all the details. Right. I just have your side. And the other one is, you're not going to do what I tell you to anyway. You're a full grown human being that has been successful, and like, it's just wasted advice. And then I'm going to get pissed for you're not taking my advice. Right. So why would I do that? And then the last piece of this is delivering on the promise. Just do what you say you're going to do. Pretty simple. Build trust that way. But most of that's about communication. It's most listening, understanding, sharing from experience. Pretty simple deals. So tell me a little bit about what you've taken, the communication, and let's put that into the written communication that happens in business. And the number 1 written communication in business is
email.
There you go.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah.
Overused.
Way overused. Yeah. But look, we're not getting away from it, right? Yep. Most businesses are email driven, right? They've got the email culture. It's embedded, and it ends up being the way we often talk to each other more often than we should, in my opinion. Yeah. So just let's backstep for a second.
Okay.
Everything you've talked about, and obviously going through your course and really being a deep study of it. I love it. It's been the inspiration for me to just take that and run with it and even expand upon it. And I've truly enjoyed having the ability to coach others on that.
Great.
I focus a lot on the listening, and then I really focus on this topic you just brought up, which is email etiquette. I think if I can do anything with a small business, especially, is if I can change how they're emailing each other and get them just clear on what proper communication should look like, then wow, it's just going to completely change that business. Let's start here. Okay. Let's start with the hierarchy of communication, which is really, really important. Now, when I get to that slide in the presentation, before I let anything come out, I ask the question, what does everybody think that the highest form of communication is? What's the answer? Because I bet you get the same answer.
Well, no, I'll have a different answer because I teach this. So,
well, everybody says phone. I die crazy. Because they all say phone.
Crazy. And
I'm scratching my head and I'm like, okay, let's go ahead and start.
Not
this.
Even today during a pandemic does phone hit the top of the list.
So, and I have some people say email, by the way.
Yeah, sure.
But it absolutely is not. It's face-to-face. That nothing takes the place of face-to-face communication. I'm going to repeat that because it's so important. Nothing takes the place of face-to-face communication. And the reason is we see body language, we hear tone, how somebody is sitting, whether or not they have their arms crossed, right? Or whatever. But I would say this too. It's a lot harder to get upset with somebody when you're face to face with them. heck of a lot easier. That's why a lot of exchanges happen via email.
Yeah.
Because it can feel very anonymous.
There's a barrier between us.
And even the phone, because the person, can't see you or where you're at. So second best form of communication is going to be as close as you can get to face, which is what we've been living in for the past year and a half, which is Zoom or any type of video type of conference call. So I think that's incredibly effective. I've really worked hard with my team to move to communicating externally with clients via video conference versus just the phone call.
So, and why that's important is because you can still see body language, at least the facial recognition of the body language.
Yeah.
So I tell people this though, between those two levels, like if I'm on a Zoom, and I'm pretty good at this body language thing, so I've studied it a lot and I pay attention to it, I can tell who's engaged and who's not on a Zoom call.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy, right?
It is.
I can tell who to call on because who wants to say,
you mean the
hands.
person that's got their head down?
Well, that's pretty simple, right? But I'm talking about just watching the eyebrows or watching the smile or anything to see who really has something to say about that thing. I know who wants to talk next that way. But the different, and when I'm face to face, so I say I can read your body language on Zoom. Face to face, I can read your soul.
Yeah.
I mean, I can look in your eyes and see what's in there.
Yeah.
So I think that's why that face-to-face matters so much, right?
Well, and next is phone, right? So
Sure.
I don't want to diminish how important, just making a phone call can be. And I would say this about the phone call is you have the ability to work through problems a lot faster, right? So if there is an objection or there's something that needs to be covered, that needs to go deeper, there's a concern or something like that, that can be handled in a phone call, which brings me to email etiquette. And really, I'll say it as simple as this: email is for disseminating information. That's really all it should be used for.
There's a secondary use. So after my phone call with you or after my Zoom, I use it to memorialize the conversation.
For sure. Put it in writing, follow up.
Like who's going to do what, by when, all that kind of stuff.
So I'm sorry, I lumped that into information.
Okay.
So then we've already had the conversation. I'm providing you the information of what we discussed.
Good.
It's not a banter. That's what I'm getting at. Is like, I think we've gone on and on around communication, Scott, at this point, and we have so much more to talk about. So stay tuned for part 2 of our communication podcast. And thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, getting me to shut up about this conversation is difficult. So it might take 2 parts.
Thank you for joining us for the CEO Podcast. To learn more about Scott and Vince, please visit theceopodcast.net and check out the calendar to tune in for our next episode. While on the site, you can also listen to past episodes, access additional content created for our listeners, and if you would like to dive deeper into any topic, there is an option to schedule some time with Scott or Vince. Thanks for listening.